In spiritual communities, it is not uncommon that people say that even though one is liberated, it is still possible to enjoy sensuality. While there is a very specific way in which that statement is true, there are innumerable ways in which that statement is not true at all. Today we try to analyze and understand why any individual who has some advanced understanding of the Dhamma will not radiate towards sensuality any longer. Quite the contrary, they will radiate towards seclusion. Or as the Buddha said, for the wise, the beautiful and the ugly remain standing in the world, but they have removed a desire and craving toward them. And we now try to understand what the Buddha meant by that statement. As you know, I like to start with a few examples to give you an intuition on a topic. And while I normally avoid this, I would like to start with a specific example of Alan Watts. While I do not practice what he said, and I'm not too educated on his stuff, one thing became very clear to me in the very shallow contact that I had with his stuff. People love what he presents, as he basically allows you to keep all your taints and still make spiritual progress. In his own words, Alan still loves drinking and smoking and sexuality and many other aspects of sensuality. The same is true for many other gurus and modern spiritual sects. Yet, according to the Buddha, that should not be possible. And according to the suttas, that should also not be possible, even if the specific lecture has not been given by the Buddha. And this kind of thinking is not only limited to those very strong affirmers of sensuality. It also applies to very serious-seeming practitioners as well. There is a surprising number of overweight monastics who have a big problem with eating. In fact, even at the time of the Buddha, it was such a common problem that the Buddha talked a lot about that problem. And as you might know, eating is a very, very big part of sensuality, and those monks do celebrate it. Yet, for a breakthrough to the Dhamma, you cannot have any value in any sensuality left. Sensuality comes as a package, as a whole. You value the entire thing or nothing at all, if you want to make it to liberation. So, is any of that true? Can you keep what you liked before? Can you still cherish it and want it and desire it? Well, but first, a very important distinction and definition of what I mean when I talk about craving, as there is a lot of misunderstanding floating around. We have the terms craving and clinging in Buddhism, and it is very important, at least in my opinion, to distinguish between both, even if they cannot be fully told apart in experience sometimes. I like to think of it in terms of a root view, for example, that the immediacy of craving grows from. But that is just one model. You can also say that it is all just craving and a hierarchy of craving. Anyway, craving is usually used with a small c. That would be the very immediate craving or pressure to act that you experience in any situation. Something very immediate and very visible and very pressuring. However, there's also the craving with a capital C. That is the designator for craving as a whole, the entirety of it. Any possible craving, an umbrella term for that. And that is a very different beast. Especially the latter kind of craving is very different from the first one. It is basically invisible. You can only see it if you dig for it by, for example, restraining your actions first. And that usually interrupts a routine of yours so that you are forced to be apart from what you want. And that in turn leads to the surfacing of the immediate kind of craving with a small c, and also to the arising of suffering, as craving and suffering co-arise. You could also call this clinging or attachment, and from that, craving arises. So only because you value something, which might not be visible, can craving even arise. Clinging would be, in that mythology, the root craving grows from, and that is a very important paradigm in Buddhism. The co-arising with craving, with valuing of views, craving can arise. And just to make sure that I can reach as many people as possible, here I like to give you a few synonyms for both terms. Craving is sometimes also called pressure, wanting, longing, clinging, liking, and all the other terms. It's really about an attitude of wanting something. Clinging, however, is usually called desire, a value, a positive view, a root, an attachment, something that is hidden like a root under the surface, but something is growing from it from time to time. And this later kind of craving or clinging is what the Dhamma is all about. You can feel completely free from craving, and yet the roots are still there. On that level, many people have achieved nothing at all and are still worldlings, even if they feel like gods. And that is something that people have a hard time wrapping their heads around, because you feel completely free. And from your perspective, if you have trained yourself like that, everything is done. Well, given the limited perspective of one human life, then you would be free. But if there is rebirth and everything else, then you would not be free so much. But now the interesting part about both craving and clinging is that the vast majority of people love their cravings. They see it as something beneficial, an intimate friend, a cause of joy and happiness. To them, that is how craving feels. They look right past it and just see the reward at the end. They only see their goals and not what is present here and now. Actually, craving is indeed painful right here and now, and very much not worth it. There's little gratification in it, and much danger, and much drawback. And we are very selective about our perception of craving, and usually ignore half of the equation or more. And here is a sutta snippet that illustrates, hopefully, what I mean. They would tell him, "Good man, a sixth murderer, an intimate companion, is pursuing you with a drawn sword. Whenever I see him, I will cut off his head right on the spot. Do what has to be done, good man." And the sixth murderer, the intimate companion with drawn sword, that is a designation for delight and lust, from Anguttara Nikaya, number 35.238. And I think I used that in the past too. The pain of craving and clinging only really becomes apparent when one cannot have something that they usually get or want. This is even the very definition of suffering from the suttas, when the Buddha gets very general in his definitions. Clinging, on the other hand, has no real feel to it, except when a view of yours is challenged. When craving with a small c immediately grows from your views and you suffer. Clinging could also be phrased as craving for a view or value of yours. Or that's how I like to portray it. Some people see it differently, but the effect should more or less be the same. So the Dhamma practice is not only one of removing the immediate craving or pressure or stress, it is especially one of removing the hidden values, the underlying roots, the subtle, latent craving. One could even say it is all about that, and not at all about removing the immediate stuff. It's not a quick fix, it's a marathon. That is where the true practice begins, when you start devaluing the sensual views and desires of yours. If they are gone, immediate pressure or craving could not arise any longer. And this is what true practice is like. It is always about getting to the roots of things. If there is no immediate craving right now, that does not mean at all that you no longer hold views. It does not mean that immediate craving cannot come back. Yet that is what Dhamma is about. You want to make sure that immediate craving cannot regrow. But what does that mean in terms of enjoying certain things? Can you no longer have fun? Is everything you deem nice gone? Is it a constant struggle and life becomes grey and bleak? Well, you might have guessed it, but the answer is no. The beautiful and the ugly, as said in the beginning, remain standing in the world, as the suttas say. The wise just remove their desire for those things. Even an arahant can still have disagreeable thoughts, and much more a sotapanna, who is not even close to arahantship. In fact, it is very likely that not much changes about that, at least initially. Everything remains full of sensual prospects. It is just that the significance of those things have changed. Before, they seemed nice and inviting, and now there's a real danger, and you will not go back there, at least as much as before. And the suttas compare this understanding with a drink where someone put poison in. If you do not know that, and the drink tasted nice, you will just enjoy it and repeat it, over and over and over again, maybe even drink more. Yet if you have learned that there is poison in there, and know with absolute certainty, then no amount of apparent niceness can make you drink that stuff. It is the same with triggering sensual things. In a way, they are the same and still taste good and are enjoyable to a degree, but they are no longer what they were before, because you know that they are poisoned. The key thing is that the seeker, the one who is at least a sotapanna, is no longer forced by their feelings towards enjoying sensuality as before. Normally we are bullied towards our objects of desire, and the main reward we get for giving in is a seizing of that pressure here and now, plus a tiny bit of natural agreeableness of what we have desired. This is why people can enjoy the most hideous stuff, because it is ultimately not about the stuff, it is about the craving. The craving aspect of experience is what makes the experience or the drink poisonous. The craving makes it poisonous. This is why the Buddha called craving the three poisons of greed, aversion, and delusion. Yet leaving that out also removes a certain amount of gratification from the experience. Even if it was poison, it was still tasty poison, and you will grieve about it a bit, especially in the beginning, when you have to start paying back your sensual debt. And just to give you an idea of how fleeting and ever-changing our likes and desires are, here's a small thought experiment. Imagine your favorite dish, something that you could eat a lot of every single day. And now think about really doing that. every day, copious amounts of it. Would you still like it the same after a few months? Likely not. And the only thing that changed is your attitude. The dish is still the very same in the world. And that is also what changes with the Dhamma, the significance of your experience. That is what changes. So while you still can enjoy agreeable situations and circumstances, there is no longer the invisible pressure to do so. And if there is, you will see it more as a pain and an annoyance than as something good, as a real danger. The craving-born pleasure, that is actually painful, will be gone and off the table for the most part. And the more you train yourself, the more it will look like something hideous and something that you should not enjoy. And this includes most of the Alan Watts and fake guru stuff. That still includes a very sensual-based lifestyle. If people still live among sensuality like that, they usually haven't given up anything at all. Yet, there is a very, very faint, almost infinitely small possibility that 1 in a million unicorn people could do certain things without craving that are normally strongly associated with craving. But I only mention this for technical reasons. Technically, whatever the senses throw at us is pure. What corrupts it is our craving. And yeah, but this is so rare that I don't think it's very beneficial to talk about that, except for technical correctness. So in essence, we end up with two possibilities. Either we no longer want what we have previously desired, because we have noticed it as what it was, actually painful and troublesome. Or the other option is that the thing we desire is still agreeable, but we are now in a situation where we do not need it anymore. Compared to the reward at the end, the default state of being is better already, as there is no thirst anymore, no wanting, no needing. Everything is already perfectly fine the way it is. So why get up and go through all that effort to get something? If something naturally comes along your way, that is agreeable. It still may be enjoyed though. It is a nice sunset, a walk in nature, or something also like a good meal. It is agreeable still. Health is still agreeable. Many things are still agreeable. And if they randomly come your way, you can enjoy them. But you no longer go after them, the same as before. Yet the default mode of being would be one of varying degrees of seclusion and apartness from sensuality, depending on your progress. If you still spend most of the day chasing after things, which includes nice meditation experiences or cushion-based peace, then there is not really any progress. Sensuality still takes the #1 spot, even if it is more subtle sensuality. You still manipulate your circumstances and are not content with how things are. If you could not stop right now and never meditate again, you are drawn by some invisible force to get back to the cushion when you try to abstain for a while. Then you know that you have cultivated those golden chains that the Visuddhimagga book is talking about. And interestingly, that is also exactly what meditation in the sutras is all about. When you no longer want anything, you just sit down. Why? Because you have nothing else to do. There are just perfect situations right now, and there's no desire to interrupt it. The sitting is not a method. It is a product of non-craving. Isn't it interesting how modern meditation and the sutras deviate from that? It's likely the complete opposite when it comes to the way to approach meditation. No craving means sitting down because it's perfect. You don't sit down to cultivate no craving. Because of the no craving, you sit down. But anyway, let us now come to the most important point. First, there are different kinds of pleasure. There's sensual pleasure, and this is the only thing that the worldling knows. It makes craving stop for a while, for a very short while, but this is the peace that we can get, that we are used to. So we go for it. And if that is not there, then there is suffering. Yet there are other kinds of superior well-being that we should cultivate in meditation, namely the joy of not being pressured. Things are either nice when you go about it rightly, but not worth the stress, or they seem nice before, but became like a poisonous drink. So in any case, you stop chasing pleasure, even if there are still agreeable thoughts and agreeable experiences. You no longer go for it. Why? Because you are perfectly content right now. Why should you try to improve your situation if it is already perfect? I mean, if you are thrown into circumstances that are agreeable, you can still enjoy that to some degree, but you're always a bit wary, because if those experiences were triggering before, you will be careful around those, simply because you have burned yourself in the past. But anyway, this should be enough for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy and like what I do, feel free to like, subscribe, and do the YouTube things. But apart from that, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.